All right. Good morning, or good afternoon, and good evening. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Welcome to another Tuesday on the Brandon Robertson Soul Hour. This is episode 20. I am very excited about this evening's interview. So, my guest for this evening is a native of the Los Angeles County area. She is a former employee of the Grief and Garris Management Company. For those who don't know, this is the management company that actually helped discover the Beatles to bring them over to America. She is also the founder of the Make Music LA nonprofit organization, and she is one of the few people that I've interviewed that has such an incredible and wonderful story. So everybody, I want you guys to give a round welcome on my show, Mrs. Dorsay Dujon. Yes, welcome.
Hi, everyone. Hi, Brandon.
How are you doing?
I'm great, thank you.
So I have to ask first, what is the weather like in Los Angeles right now,
It's
currently?
gorgeous, actually. It is really beautiful.
And do you think that the weather is gonna still hold its own with all the fires that has been occurring? I hope it hasn't really affected your area too much.
Well, it hasn't, except for some days that when it has been really bad, we get, very overcast and you actually can smell the smoke when it's really, really bad.
Ooh.
But it's just so tragic that this state every year we go through this, and it's nature. It's a natural occurrence. Not all of these fires are arson by any means. It's
Right.
nature.
Man, when we were talking earlier just a second ago, and I was telling you how hot and humid it is in Florida. It feels god awful, especially around like the fall time, because we don't really we don't experience seasons here in Florida. It's year round hot. We are right by the equator. It doesn't get any much more hotter than that. So
The one thing that I enjoyed about being in Florida was being able to walk up to the water and it not be freezing cold.
mhm.
It's like a bath. It is so warm and lovely.
Oh
We don't
wow.
have that here. The
Man,
Pacific is cold.
yeah, I was gonna say the first time I ever went to San Francisco, and I went to there was a beach area right by that park by the painted lady houses, or the
The
painted lady.
Stinson
It's
Beach, was it called
yeah,
Stinson Beach?
it's like all it's near where the Full House houses are, where Full House was filmed, and there's a beach right up the road from there. And I remember I went on a school trip, and we all decided, because we're all Floridians, we're like, we're just gonna go run in the water. I went into hypothermia quick, like super quick. Boy, that was rough. I was like, good God, this is cold. This isn't
Yeah.
like cold. This is like polar cold. So, well, Dorsey, thank you so much for being here this after, I guess on your end, afternoon, this evening over where I'm at. And so I want to take a step back, and so the viewers will kind of know a little bit of background. Tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, where you're from, what was your childhood like growing up in your area, and how did you get involved with music? Like, how did music started to become part of your life?
Well, music was part of my life, I guess you could say, from birth, really, because there was always music in my house. I
Hmm.
was born in Boston to immigrant parents from Jamaica. And where we lived was a sort of very close area. Neighbors are very close to one another. We had this three-story old Victorian house. We lived on the top floor. And some of my earliest and fondest memories of music was actually going to the Esplanade and hearing Arthur Fiedler and the Boston Pops.
Oh
So
wow.
we would be out there, in the park on blankets and picnics and 4th of July and any other time we're a concert. So that was a part of it. And then I was the youngest in the family, and my brothers and sisters were all in their, late teens by the time I was born. So the music that they played, I listened to that. And then at the same time, a lot of their friends were musicians. And in those days, musicians weren't staying in hotels, so they would stay at someone's house. So we had a lot of that, and then a lot of students from all over the world. There were all kinds of languages spoken in my house, and kids who didn't have anywhere to go for Thanksgiving or Christmas would end up at my mom's house.
Wow.
So that's kind of what it started like. But then when I got older, came out here when I was 8 years old, which was a very long time ago, 1953 to be exact. At that time, let's see, getting a little older, and music and dance was just, we had what? Let me see. I'm trying to think of who I would have listened to in those days. Oh God, Fats Domino was huge, huge, huge. Loved Fats Domino, and those were the records in that time period. And then there was American Bandstand that I watched. It was before Soul Train. So, you come home and you'd be dancing every day. And then, of course, when Soul Train came on, I think we really only got it on Saturdays. And then that's when we were able to see more of the, R&B artists with Soul Train. But my involvement in the industry came, my first job was at the William Morris Theatrical Booking Agency. And I had been on, oh God, I don't know, maybe 10 or 12 different interviews and didn't get any jobs. And I go to this office. I had no idea really what the office was, but my interview was with the head of the HR. And so he said to me, he said, well, do you have any experience? And I said, I've been on all these interviews and everybody asked me the same question. Do I have any experience? No, I don't have any experience. And how am I going to get any if no one hires me? So he laughed. He laughed and he said to me, he said, well, we don't have any Negroes in the office. And I'm sitting here thinking to myself, what's he talking about? We didn't use that term in my house. I never heard that. No one said to me, you're a Negro. So I'm just listening to him. And then he says, oh yeah, we do. Bobby that runs the parking lot and Abe Lastfogel's chauffeur. And I'm going, oh, okay. So he says, if we were to give you this opportunity, you'd have to do a really good job because then we wouldn't be hiring anybody else if you don't. So immediately I've got the weight of the world on my shoulders. And
I bet.
So he comes back around and asks me the question again, do you have any experience? And I looked at him, I said, yes. He said, can you use a teletype? I said, yes, I can. I didn't even know what a teletype was. So he said, okay, there's an opening in the file room and, and we'll be able to give you that job. So can you start Monday? Absolutely. So that was my first my introduction to working, and also my introduction to learning that nothing's impossible. And I say that not just because I got that job, but simply because the men, and it was almost all men, who ran that office, who were the agents, they were the agents to all the biggest stars in Hollywood. And there was a work ethic. And that part of that was nothing is impossible. And we want it done yesterday. And so you learn how to get it done. There are no excuses. It can happen. So, and I think that was a good thing to learn. So that if there's an obstacle, it's just a challenge.
And with that first position, what were some of the duties that they had you do that you were kind of starting to learn the tricks and the trades of the industry? Like, what was some of the things you were picking up?
Well, I would go to these various offices every day with the teletype, and I would have to. The teletype was, I guess, it was the form of communication. You know, there were no cell phones and there were no computers. And if messages were going to get from one office to another, they came across this teletype, and this machine would type out the messages, and then we would copy them and take them around to everyone. So everybody got the same messages from the New York and Chicago offices and the London office.
Mm-hmm.
And but the people that were coming into the office, yes, some of them were celebrities and some of them were other, producers and directors. But there was just a feeling and kind of an excitement about being there, because these are all the creatives, and
Mm-hmm.
these are the people that at that time were the agents of the people like the guy Joe Schoenfeld, who Marilyn Monroe was his discovery. And then you have, Sam Weisbord, who was another big agent, all the big television and motion pictures, and the artists that performed in them somehow came through that office one way or the other. It was the biggest office, theatrical booking agency in the world at that time.
Wow.
I had no idea, but my job was really small, but important in that I was in the file room, and so filing all these papers and letters from various people.
Mm-hmm.
Garson Kanin and his wife Ruth Gordon, and these are names that you probably don't even know who they are, but they had a very huge impact on Hollywood and what they did. And James Mason and his wife were going through a divorce. Her name was Pamela Mason. That was big news in those days. Doesn't mean very much to a lot of people now. But these were, and like Gregory Peck, who was a huge, huge star. And, it's kind of funny to have been in that position and not really known or really understood where you were at the time.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't thinking about this job as, oh, gosh, that's Henry Fonda's cousin, sister, daughter, or whatever, or this is another person. You don't even think like that. It becomes a part of your, the norm.
Right.
And there were, let's see, George Slaughter. George ended up having a show. It was, I believe his show was Laugh In. It's a big, gigantic show, and he had all of these stars on that. And so he was there, and was before he was doing his show. And all these various agents, who was a guy named Jess Rand, he handled Sam Cooke. And so he would come into the office, and then I'd see people having lunch. They go to Nate Nell's for sandwiches and see different people. It was just what was happening. And I was tall, thin, with my little mini skirts, and had no idea of what meeting these people and what these experiences, what they would really mean to my whole life, actually. Because
Wow.
yeah, that's just part of the beginning.
Man, and when I teach in my music appreciation class, I use this saying that I came up with. It says, in order to be understood, you must learn how to understand. And when it's in relation to music, you have to understand history first in order to know why and how that music exists.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're in the section of in my music appreciation class right now. We're in the section where we're talking about the minstrel shows that were occurring back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
And I told them about Thomas Dartmouth Rice, who created the first minstrel show. And I was telling them how back in that time period, it was normalized. It was compartmentalized to where African Americans had no say so. They know they were being mocked. We knew this.
Mm-hmm.
And these trends, now what those minstrel shows did was it opened the door for when Broadway became big in the 20th century, in the earlier 20th century, how they took those elements, the makeup, the stage plotting, the comedic, or the commedia, or in the opera term, how they took those concepts and they expand upon that, and they didn't use the racial connotation that came with it. But I teach my students that though that had a negative impact, the positives that came out of that were it pushed the culture in the 20th century. So where now Broadway like Hamilton can exist. And so when I was able to tie that segue for them, they put two and two together and like, oh, it makes sense now. Hamilton would have not existed without the birth of what was going on in that time period.
Yes.
And so my next question for you is, when you left your first position and then you transitioned into working for Grief and Garris management, which
it's Grief.
Grief. I'm sorry. Grief and Garris.
Yeah.
And that is like, to me, like a big bump. That's like if you were to get a salary raise and you went from one pay grade to like you jumped to 3 pay grades up. What was that experience like? Because that amount of people who came out of that office that they represented was like all the who's. So how did that experience help you transition into where you are now?
Well, it's funny. That office, there was 3 offices going on there, really. There were 2 attorneys that were in the office. One was Sam Norton, and the other was Seymour Lazar. They did a lot of entertainment work. And then George and Sid were on one side. And George had an absolute amazing, his energy was at fever pitch. He was just like this all the time, but very kind, very kind. He was not one of these boisterous, angry people. He was a really genuine person. Sid was, on the other hand, the most quiet and had his pipe. And he just was like glass, like so smooth. He was so smooth. And he was the music man. And he had been a conductor himself. But the atmosphere in the office was really one which was very congenial. And because the people who are coming in, Timothy Leary came there to the office. And there, Jose Feliciano was one of their artists. And Barry White was involved with Sid pretty much a lot. Yeah. Very interesting. Yes.
The Barry.
Yeah.
Wow.
Wonderful love songs. Yes, he was involved with Sid too. And then there was oh my God, I can hear his voice and see him now. And Joe Sample. Joe Sample was handled by the office.
The guitar player.
No,
not Joe. I'm thinking of somebody else.
Piano player. Joe Sample.
What is it? Why does his name sound familiar?
Yeah, you'll know when you find.
I'm going blank. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Street Life. You remember Street Life?
Yes. Okay. I'm with you.
So it was just a wonderful experience. All these amazing people. Seymour Lazar was a very petite, wore Hawaiian shirts and khaki pants. Well, I read his obituary a few years ago, and I learned things about him that I had no idea. He was a Wall Street wizard. To this day, they don't know how he did the things that he did. So he was pretty extraordinary. His client was Timothy Leary, and Timothy Leary is the one that had LSD and was very famous for that, with people getting high and on this, psychedelic drug and creating art. And one of the artists that was there was, I believe, was Bert Schonberg. Schonberg. anyway, his art was full of he did it while he was under the influence. So you had this variety of people. And then downstairs was John Levy. And John Levy, of course, had all of these amazing jazz artists that were a part of his talent roster, which was extraordinary. And then out of the office, Sid Garris was one of the producers of Stan Kenton's Neophonic Concert. And that concert, the concerts that they had, that was the very first time that jazz was played at the Dorothy Chandler Pavilion, which is at the Los Angeles Music Center. And that was a really big deal.
Wait, I got to cut you off for a second. Hold on. Like the jazz at the Philharmonic, is that the concert you're referring to?
In Los Angeles.
Yes, in Los Angeles.
Yes.
What?
That was huge.
Yeah, that was. Well, I remember. If I'm not mistaken, from when I did my research in grad school, when I wrote my dissertation, or my thesis, I should say, I think Ray Brown was part of that first group that played at the Jazz at Philharmonic in Los Angeles, because he had moved to Los Angeles. He was doing studio work, and that was when like the cool jazz period kind of emerged. Yes. Is that kind of play into what you were?
Well, yeah, that's making sense. Now, I'm not sure if Ray played at that particular concert. I'm not sure that he did, but I did know Ray, so there are other concerts and other places where I saw him. Mm-hmm. He may have been, I'm thinking that he may have been in one of the bands where I saw Oliver Nelson. I have been invited by Nancy Wilson, who at the time, I met her when I was at the William Morris office. We were shopping in the same store on Beverly Drive. And we just chatted, and we exchanged numbers, and I went to visit. And a couple of times she invited me to go with her when she was recording. One was she was doing an album with Gamble and Huff. And then another time, I'm trying to remember, I think it was H.B. Barnum. But I had a chance to hear them live, and Nelson Riddle as well. So now those experiences, I knew what I was listening to when I heard them. That was extraordinary. Those days at Capitol, I will never forget, because that was pretty extraordinary. And it was. I was like just a person that was there. I mean, I had nothing to do with anything that was going on, but you do know when you're in the presence of genius. That you do know. Right. And when you hear that big band and that sound well, you know what that sounds like. It is extraordinary, and it breaks my heart that we're living now in a time when we can't hear that in person. It may be a little while longer before we can, and I surely do miss it. I miss that. But I have had some extraordinary experiences, and I do know that I was very blessed to be a part of some of these experiences.
Well, with those experiences and with the amount of knowledge that you were able to gain and extract from working amongst these geniuses, what led you to create your nonprofit, the Make Music LA? What led you to creating this nonprofit? And from what I read online, and I thought it was a very unique mission statement, and and correct me if I'm wrong, I just kind of paraphrasing here, but you wanted to bring all of the beautiness and the culture that Los Angeles has to offer. And so when people come to visit, they're getting that experience. That's kind of what I gathered from when I was.
Well, that's a long-term goal. That is a long-term goal. Okay. Because I believe that on Hollywood Boulevard, to give you an example, I believe that there should be music and dancing on that boulevard every day. And then maybe in a little corner, you look down the street and you see, West Side Story taking place outside where people can watch. And then because dancing in the street, why not? Absolutely.
Right.
I mean, Martha Reeves talked about it very well. You need to be dancing in the streets. And when people come to LA, really, that's what they want to see. Right now, of course, the boulevard is practically completely shut down. But when things were busy, you didn't get that experience, except every once in a while when there would be something happening, then there might be music out there, and it would be more than likely a marching band. And but I feel that there is room there to and there is a plan for the boulevard, and they're listening. They are listening. I know they're listening. I've had an opportunity to even talk to the architects that are working on it. So I'm really happy to have had that entree. Of course, I got that because I joined the Hollywood Chamber of Commerce, but they're a great, great organization. But what I really wanted to do is about educating our children. And the best way for children to learn other things, many other things, is by having the basics of a great music education. And because it is a sense of accomplishment, and then they're a part of something that's bigger than themselves. You have to negotiate, you have to truly harmonize with your peers that are there, and because you're creating something wonderful together. And I feel that the leader, the director of the LA Phil, the Los Angeles Philharmonic, is Gustavo Dudamel. And the music training that he received as a child in Venezuela was extraordinary, because they take kids from they're 2 years old and they start teaching them fingering on the violin on paper when they're 2. And there was a film that they did. I have the film somewhere here. And Simon Battle, who was the director of the the Berlin Symphony Orchestra, went down there to see what was going on. He was really kind of, was like, okay, can't be that great. Well, they pulled together this huge orchestra, and he's going to be directing. The first chair, violin, his comments were he could hardly believe it, because this little boy's feet could not hit the floor. He was first chair.
Wow.
So that's how serious they took music. Plus, another part of that was with their social system was families who were receiving help from the government. Their children had to take music lessons. That was part of the deal. You want us to help you, then this is what you have to do. Your children have to have music. So the kids would rather play music than go out and play ball. That was what was happening.
Wow.
There were over 200 orchestras, youth orchestras in the country. I don't know what's going on there now, because they've had such difficulty, but that system, the El Sistema system, it has come over here, and there are some places that there are some teachers who are following that methodology. And in LA, we've got youth orchestras. LA or Los Angeles are here, and there are some that are growing and coming. But it's because there are people that recognize the importance and value of a music education.
Sure. And I really like that philosophy, and that's very important for, especially in our generation, the newer generation, what I like to call the millennials, the 21st century generation. Jazz has already surpassed the 100-year mark, and I love the fact that you make the importance of the youth preserving the American music. It's a preservation that has to be kind of honed in at a very early age. Otherwise, that it's like any oral tradition. If it's stopped being passed down, it's going to eventually die out. It's going to be a lost art. So kudos for that. Like, I love that statement. Love it. And so No, go ahead. Go ahead. Finish what you
No,
were.
I was just going to say that the people that we need to educate a lot are the parents, because oftentimes parents think that, well, music is frivolous, and they don't want their children to become musicians. It's not the
Right.
object that they become a professional musician.
Right.
The object is that they're able to gather the tools so that they can make a choice and become whatever they want to be.
Sure.
And that's what music gives you. Music opens the door to your brain and opens your door to understanding. And you were talking about listening. And it's like you're not listening to respond, you're listening to understand. That's the key. And that's what music does for you. It really opens the door. So if parents are worried about their children just getting a job, how about getting a job or becoming the boss? Having employees work for you. And a music education can help you to get to that place. And I think a lot of people don't really recognize that.
Right. And it's something that it is something that's very important to know. And once the parents are educated and the parents can see the benefit of why music can help their child, not only in their cognitive thinking, but also in their social skills, there's many attributes that music contributes to aside from just the physical part of it, like where you like physically playing or singing.
You're negotiating. You're
Yeah.
negotiating, but at the same time, you recognize that each instrument is playing their part to make that whole sound.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
You know, so
Exactly.
that is in life right now. When we watch those debates, there was a bully, and then there was someone who was trying to be as civil as possible. And what we were trying to teach our children is that every voice matters, every voice counts. And even if you disagree, you have to be civil and allow the other person the right
Right.
to think the way they do. Or
Right.
however.
Exactly. And on that note, the right to think what they want, I would like to ask you, what were you thinking about these choices that you made when we talked about the songs that you had to select for the show, right? So every week, I always ask my guests, they got to pick 3 songs that have a soulful meaning to them. At first, it used to be just soul records, and then I realized, wow, that is a very short, like, group of choices, because it's only so many popular soul singers that came out between 65 and 75. Like that's like when it was like at its highest, at the height, really in the 70s, but like at the height. And so everyone was picking either Donny Hathaway or Marvin. It was like the same.
I got
Aretha,
Marvin in there too.
so one of them 3 is like, okay, I gotta open it up some. So your first selection, for life, I'm gonna use the term, like the word life. So everybody who's watching, I have my guests pick 3 songs that cater to these 3 keywords: life, freedom, and perseverance, which is kind of what we're dealing with right now in our current times. So for life, you picked a song called Back in Love Again by LTD. Now, how does this song represent life for you?
Well, it was always being in the wrong relationship with the wrong person.
Ah.
And and it's like the grass is always greener, or God, he's so gorgeous, or he's so this, or he's so that. And and in those days it was the time of the feminist movement. We were in, I wasn't certainly one to just think about, okay, well, it's just one guy and that's it. No, I was pretty bad girl. So, and that song resonated with me because that's what it was every other week it was somebody different. And it was just the times, but it was also growing up, and you feel your oats. When guys are getting those notches on their belts, nobody thinks anything of it. And you think that, well, if a girl, if she's, having a good time, then it's not supposed to be that way.
Mm.
And it's like, that's not normal. That's not what life really is. The opportunities that women have, you should have an opportunity to make a choice. I'm not talking about you have to sleep with every Tom, Dick, and Harry. That's not really what I mean.
No, I
But I
get you. Yeah.
mean, you do have a right to be who you are, to be yourself. And I would have to say that I was probably, as a as a young woman, I did what I wanted to do when I wanted to. And my dad and I didn't get along very well because I had that idea. Oh, no, 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 no. It was, you have a family, you have children, and I was divorced. But it was, my life was supposed to stop at that point. If I said I was traveling, I was going somewhere, no, how can you go anywhere? You've got children. Well, you have to live your life. You can't. And when I say that, I don't mean that I shortchanged anything with my children in order to do that. That didn't happen.
Right.
But you do have to live. That's what life is all about. This is not a dress rehearsal. You get one shot at this, and you need to make it as good as you possibly can. And that doesn't mean hurting anybody else in order to do that at all. But it just means that's living your best life. And that's what growing up is. Okay, I'm 75 now, and I've got some mileage, and that's great. I have a long way to go. I haven't even, there's, just such a little chip off of that iceberg. That's really what my life is. It isn't even that big. And so there's so much more to do, so much more music to hear, so many more places to go, so much more food to eat and enjoy, and nothing is better to me than, great company, great food, and killer music. I mean, what could be better than that?
Dang, that's like a desert island like pick right there. Like if I have good food, good music, good company, I don't need nothing else. I'm straight. I like that. All right. Well, speaking of that, because it's very liberating to hear that. So with feeling liberated, you feel a sense of freedom. So for the next term, you picked a classic, which is surprisingly almost, I think, I've had, this is my 20th episode. I've had so far 30 guests. I'd say 25 out of 30 have all deemed this song with freedom. So I think that's quite surprising that everybody thinks the same thing. But you picked Marvin Gaye, What's Going On. And you actually got to experience the time period when this song first came out, like I think in 72 or somewhere 72, 73. And this is like right at the cusp at the very end of Vietnam. Like this is when the US was about to pull out of Vietnam. We are kind of we're kind of at the very end of it. We've done what we had to do. There was no reason for us to stay there, over in Korea. So we were pulling out. And yet the lyrics to this song still stands the test of time, even in 2020. Even the opening lyrics is very relatable. When I went back and listened to the song, I thought of George Floyd, like the very first opening line.
Yes.
There's so many of us dying, and I thought, man, I don't know if Marvin. And what was crazy is that the record label did not want to release that song. They fought him on that. They gave him pushback, and he still released it. And look what happened.
Well, one of the things about that song for me was I had an opportunity to hear him live at the Forum. Wow. And that was one of the most electrifying concerts I have ever attended. It was, I mean, you could hear a pin drop in there, but you could feel everything. And when he sang, I mean, he took you places that you didn't know you could go to at a concert. You were not in the forum. Every one of us had risen up somehow. Our souls were like meeting at this plane somewhere where he had taken us. And if you were like me, you come home from work during those days and the war was on television. My ex-husband had gone to Vietnam, and when he came back, he told me that he was signing up to go back again. And I said, why? Why would you want to do that? And he said to me, because that's all I know how to do.
Wow.
And I said, kill people? And he said, yes. Coming back here, he said there was nothing for him. And it just broke my heart that he felt that there was nothing here for him to do. There would be no jobs. And his mind was a mess. Wow. So you take that, and you know that when they come back from war, it doesn't matter what war it is, they're gone. The person that you knew before they went, they're not there anymore. And so, you're crying, even if your son comes back or daughter comes back, they're still not there. There is so much more that has to be done. And it wasn't done, and still isn't really being done to help veterans. Mm-hmm. So, and then of course now with our kids being killed, I mean, it doesn't matter how old you are, how young you are. If you're a person of color, you're a target. You have a target on your body. I mean, and it doesn't matter where you are. I think that's why hypertension is so rampant in Black folks, is simply because everything we do in our life, we've got to be ready for a fight of some kind, or you don't want to walk around with like a chip on your shoulder. Right. But unfortunately, when my kids were growing up, I was terrified. They go out. I want to make sure where you are, when you're going to be back. I want to know when you come in the door. Not because I don't want you to have a good time. Right. It's because you're Black.
And can I ask you something, like when I did you ever get a chance to meet Marvin Gaye, like to talk to him at all?
Not really in a real conversation. No, it would be just kind of superficial. How do you do? How are you? Good to see you again. That kind of thing.
Right. Yeah. Man, I can't imagine like to hear someone like him live, and to hear that song live, like in the time period when it was released, like that. It has such a
full orchestra.
It has a much more powerful like connection. Like we could connect to it now because it's so universally known and it's still relatable. But for someone who lived actually through that period when it was released, that I don't think there's a way to explain that, because you know what I'm saying? Like it was so much that was happening. And so, which leads me to my last song that you picked, which it's just funny that you picked this particular song, because I was listening to this with my daughter the other day, and because she kept saying that you don't love me, you're so mean to me when you punish me and this and that. I was like, you know what? I'm gonna play this Michael Jackson song for you, and maybe that'll check you for because you're basically, what you're trying to say is I don't care about you, and that's not true. And so you picked Michael Jackson's "They Don't Care About Us" for Perseverance. I love this selection for this word, because that's exactly how I feel as a young African-American male, like leaving my house every day. Mm-hmm. Like I have that in the back of my mind. Some people may not like to hear that, but I feel that's exactly how I feel, and that's the truth. Like I feel like when I leave the house, I'll go inside of a store and I'll smile at somebody and they just look at me funny, and I'm like, dang, I can't even be nice. Like you don't even care about me, not because I'm Black. Like me, Brandon, like the man, the person, not my pigment, my skin pigment, the person. So what made you choose this song, "They Don't Care About Us" for Perseverance?
Well, I think I did it because it is in all areas of society, this systemic racism, it hits you, like you said, when you least expect it. I'll just tell you a brief story. I was in a department store and I was waiting for the salesperson. And I was looking to buy a sizable amount of stuff. And I thought, okay, I'll just wait. I'm waiting. And a white man walked up and she went to him first. And he said, well, that woman has been waiting a long time. And she said, oh, that's all right. She can wait. And he said to her, that's my wife. And she about died. She no way connected me to him or him to me. But at the same time, I had been there waiting. And he comes up long after I've been there. And she goes to him first. So you have things like that happen to you. And you have things like when I go to a grocery store, women always leave their pocketbooks in the cart. Well, I never want to be anywhere near that. And I will always yell out, lady, you have your purse in the cart here. And she'll go, oh, thank you very much. Because I know if I go walk by it, someone's going to yell, she's trying to steal her purse. She's trying to steal the purse. And then they're going to knock me down on the floor and scuffle with me. Mm-hmm. That's what's in my head. It shouldn't be there. It should not be there. I'm just conditioned that way. And I was always told as a kid, you walk by anybody, why? Don't look at them. Don't look at them in the eye. So you're walking like this. And I got to a point where I'm like, I don't walk like that. I want to see the world. I want to see who's looking at me, where I'm walking, what's going on. No, I will look people in the eye. But that was kind of that day that there were just certain things that you didn't do. And you certainly aren't going to speak to anyone. And even if they speak to you, you have to be very careful what you say. Mm-hmm. If you say anything. And I think systems in society that are meant to help you don't help you. If you have to go for assistance of any kind from social services, you're left waiting and sitting for hours and hours. And then they come to you and they say, well, you have to come back on Monday or Tuesday, or we can't do that for you for another month. Wait a minute, these people need this right now. Right. A month? They have to feed their families. How are they going to do that? None of the systems talk to one another. And they're antiquated. They're just old, broken, and they were not designed to help you or me. Mm-hmm. That is not their objective. And the objective is to always make you feel that what isn't right with your life is your fault. That's kind of like, and men who want to take care of their families and aren't able to do that, a lot of people end up killing their families, or these men leave and go away because they can't face their families, because they can't take care of them. We have to fight and scream for a wage that can support a family. Mm-hmm. Try going to the movies when we could go to the movies. It's $100 to go to a movies. I mean, and especially if you want to buy popcorn and candy, you can't afford that. Your kids can't wear the Air Jordans or whatever else it is that they want to wear because you can't afford to buy it. So we're constantly made to feel less than, and we can't provide for. And that's just not true. The desire is there. The talent and capability is all there. But it's designed to house us in cages and prisons, and to, again, not give you the tools where you can really excel. And that has to do with the fact that, how wealth is controlled, and where you buy your house, and how if you have your house and you want to do something with your house, you can't do it because they've redlined you. But the minute you're gone and the white family moves in, they can do whatever the hell they want. Same house, same location, right. and they call that gentrification.
Yep.
So I mean, all of those things, but that's why that song, and it just resonates with me now too, because of um, the difficulties with police who are the bad ones. The bad ones. There's certainly many more good ones, but the bad ones that we hear about because of the really terrible things that they do.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel that that's why right now is a time when everyone is home. We're going to have so much more amazing music and lyrics that will be just amazing, that are going to document this time period. We will have so much more creativity coming because it's happening every day. I mean, these artists, we have to do something. We can't just, sit around and say, well, all right, we're just going to wait until 21, 22 when we can do things. They're creating, and
Yeah.
you know that. So those are my choices.
I will say, at the very beginning of the summer, when I think it was at the very height of all this is in social injustice that was occurring, and it was at one point in the summer we had like 3 or 4 black, African Americans get killed like back to back to back. Like it just like spun out of control. And at first, I'm not a political guy at all. I try my best to like stay out of that. I stay in my own lane. My lane is music. I'm good at that. If I try to add politics and music, it just blurs everything for me. But there is a part of me as a musician, I am responsible. If I've accepted this lifestyle, I have an obligation to contribute to what's going on in the time. So that way I know that I had some kind of contribution to make a statement or a change. I have to do that. That's my obligation as a musician, because we are intended to share our gift to the world. It's not something that's ours. That's why I teach my music appreciation class that music is a universal language. It has no racial boundary. It has no color line. It is accepted by all, right? Because someone from Africa can get along with someone in Japan who can also get along with someone in Wyoming.
Yes.
Because they all universally audibly can do and understand each other from music, right? So when we talk about this particular song, the Michael Jackson song, and I think about like, why is it that musicians right now have found that, the kind of music that they're making it has a lot more meaning behind it. Not that they didn't feel that way before, but because what COVID has forced us to do was shut down, we've had time to reevaluate. We've had time to go back and look at ourselves. We've had time to assess what is it that we've been doing musically to contribute to the revolution and the movement of pushing forward humanity. Like, what are we doing? And so now everyone is angry because of what's going on. We're angry. And so out of that anger, there's gonna spark some type of evolution that is going to really change the face of what music is going to be like 20 years from now. So I thought, like, particular out of all the guests I've had, when I thought this song, man, it was such a great choice because it really does speak to what we're dealing with. So I would like to ask, what is your one final thought that you could leave for my audience in terms of like to sum up everything that we talked about? What is something that you want to leave them with?
Well, I would say that through the arts, through music, through dance, to continue to share your gifts, and not to lose hope, and to never give up, ever. Because this change and shift that we have, that we're going through right now, those young voices and young men and women that are out there in the streets that are protesting, they are the catalyst. I guess that's the word I would use. And we need to support them. And we also need to take more artists, musicians, and have really go into your neighborhoods and politically become involved, because a lot of artists right now are really hurting, and many of your politicians don't really know, and this is across the country, they don't really know the pain that you're in now, because if you're a gig artist, there is no work for you anywhere. And, you know, you need people to know that you're there, because you really are the backbone of our lives. Music is so important to us. And I mean, what are people doing? They're watching Netflix and all the movies, and they're listening to music. And we want you to know that your involvement in being out there in the streets is so welcome. At my age, I can't do it now with this COVID. I can't be out there, but I certainly would love to be. But I can do what I can do to support you in that effort. But we have to keep this moving and moving forward, and we have to do it collectively. All of us have to do this together. This is not a white thing, black thing. This is an all of us thing. People came to this country and are still trying to come into this country because it allows us to have that freedom.
Right.
And it's our job to keep it and to make it grow. And we are all a part of that together. So all I can say is that, you know, we need a lot of prayers, we need a lot of votes, and just keep on making your art. And yeah, I love you all.
Well, Dorsay, I have to say this has been a wonderful interview. Like, I've actually like super enjoyed talking to you. I love the fact that, you know, you are 75, young, beautiful, and are holding it down, and so vibrant. Like, I'm very inspired by this. Like, man, for you to have lived this very lustful life and have experienced the things that you have experienced, a lot of people haven't lived that long to be able to speak that, you know, so voraciously. So like, I applaud you, and I thank you so much for joining me this evening and just taking the time out to just talk to me and my viewers, and just sharing your knowledge and experience in the music industry, because man, like, you've gotten to see the different changes and shifts each decade happen into where we are now, and our youth is what's going to carry the torch. So thank you. I guess that's what all I can say is thank you, because it's been such a like humbling interview. This is so humbling to hear some of the things you were sharing with me. So thank you.
Well, I want to thank you for inviting me. I've really enjoyed being here and having the opportunity to speak with you and your viewers. I've loved every moment of it, and thank you.
Awesome. Well, hey, everybody who's watching, thank you all for tuning in for another episode of the Brandon Robertson Soul Hour. I will be back next week, and actually next week I have a special guest who we're going to get into the whole voting. And basically, we're going to use that whole segment to try to reach out to as many people as we can to get out and vote. Please, people, I cannot express how important it is. If you have the right in America to vote, you need to go vote. It is important. Your vote will count. I used to think that my vote never counted because the way things turned out. But I realized soon after that the reason why those things turned out the way they did is because people weren't voting. So you need to get out and vote. Please make sure you go out and vote. And so again, Dorsay, thank you so much for joining me this evening. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and we will stay in touch. And everyone else, you guys take care. Y'all have a wonderful evening as well, and wear your mask. I'll see y'all next week. Thank you.